Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's book-to-show comparison for the Expanse Season 5, Episode 3, Mother. This video is a part of a series of videos where I compare the Expanse TV show to that of its source material, pointing out the differences and giving my opinion on how well I think those adaptations work. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for up to the end of Season 5 of The Expanse. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. However, if you haven't read the books, not to worry, this video will not contain spoilers from future events beyond Season 5. So our episode begins with the scene between Delgado and Avasarala on Luna as they serve themselves drinks at a private bar. Delgado tells a joke about a Beltary Martian and an Earther ordering drinks at a bar. He doesn't get to finish his joke, but it's basically there to illustrate the common racial slurs against Mars and Belt are still prevalent on Earth. Then a scientist enters, as apparently Avasarala wanted to consult with a civilian scientist, and they ask him about the fragments of rocks the science ship detected around Venus. He noticed there is more mass on one side, suggesting that they're fragments of the same asteroid. Delgado asks him to speculate on what the impact would be if an asteroid that size hit Earth. The scientist says nothing, as the asteroid spotters would destroy any asteroids before it hit Earth, but Avasarala asks him to indulge them in speculation, so he answers the question, and it's really bad. They then excuse the scientist, reminding him not to tell anyone about the meeting that they had. Delgado and Avasarala then speculate that the asteroid was coated in Martian stealth tech and hurled at Earth, but thankfully broke up before it got there. But Avasarala warns it's likely that wasn't the only rock that Marco and Aros threw at Earth, and that they should redirect the watchtowers to look out for these stealth-encoded asteroids. But Delgado says the watchtowers are pointed at Mars, but Avasarala argues that Mars isn't a threat to them anymore. But Delgado still insists the military leaders will never go for it, but Avasarala say that they have to try because they know that they're right. So as I mentioned in previous videos, this Delgado and Avasarala storyline wasn't in the books at all, and that when the asteroids hit Earth, nobody saw it coming, and there was no foreshadowing to this whatsoever. But I actually think it works better that they foreshadow it in the show. It creates a sense of impending doom. One most common in film and television is that the heroes would, of course, prevent it. So they, in fact, tease that Avasarala and Delgado are going to prevent it, but they don't. And the devastation happens anyway, and I think that makes the attack much more powerful. So I'm going to give this a +4. Next, we go over to Taiko Station, where Fred Johnson and Holden are visiting Monica Stewart, where she's recovering in the med bay. Monica shows them the piece of evidence she wanted to show Holden before she was abducted, and it's footage of the scientists studying the protomolecule on Ceres being shot and killed, except for Kotazar, who is abducted. Fred and Holden muse if they went after Kotazar, they could be coming for the protomolecule next. Holden gives Johnson a head tilt, suggesting that they speak in private, so they go to exit the room. Monica calls out to them that they need to keep her in the loop, but they ignore her. They then go to meet with Bull to go over the danger that they're in, and Johnson deduces the first thing to do is to determine who abducted Monica Stewart. Now, in the novels, Holden and Johnson do visit Monica while she's recovering, but she doesn't show them a video of Kotazar being abducted. As I covered in my Season 2 book-to-show comparison videos, Kotazar wasn't a factor in the books as he was in the show. At this point, Kotazar only appeared previously in the short story The Vital Abyss. which didn't involve any of the main characters. So he was never used by dolls as a bargaining chip for power the way that he was in the show, so he wasn't a factor at this stage. And I never read that short story myself, but I believe Kotazar was approached and recruited by Duarte and not abducted as he is here. Instead, in the novels, when they ask Monica for information, she asks Johnson for information in return, and when he refuses to answer her, she refuses to cooperate with him. Holden calls for everyone to calm down, that they're all on the same side, but Monica insists that she must have terms, so she and Johnson negotiate for terms on what she can cover. When they reach an agreement, Johnson concludes there's now one more person other than Holden that he can trust, which is quite different in the show where Johnson and Holden shut her out and they choose to trust Bull instead. Also in the novels, the information Monica gives them isn't about Kotazar, but about the missing ships. It's just more data on precisely when they went missing. A storyline the show has yet to pick up. So I gotta say, I kind of like the show's version of events a little better, as the links with the missing ships is very loose thread to the conspiracy going on involving Inaros and Duarte, where the show has Kotazar kidnapped, which is a much bigger deal, and plus Johnson is a bit more unprepared and freaked out in this show, which adds to the tension. So I'm going to give this a +2. So next we follow Naomi on the Texmoka as she arrives on Palace Station. She goes to a bar where the bartender recognizes her as being famous and offers her a drink, but she turns it down. Two rockhoppers approach her and ask if she thinks that she's too good for them. She apologizes and says she means no disrespect and offers to pay for their drinks, and they ask her to pay for their entire tab instead, and she agrees, and just when she's about to do it, one of the rockhoppers is attacked and thrown to the ground, and Naomi stumbles to the ground as well, and the other rockhopper runs away. Their assailants give Naomi a helping hand up, and it turns out to be her longtime friend Sin, and they hug each other. Sin notes that the Naomi Nagata that he knew wouldn't have been shaken down like that, but she states it's because that she had him around to look after her. They sit at the bar and have drinks with Corral, someone that she also knew, but unlike Sen, Corral is not happy to see Naomi and calls her a traitor to the belt and asks if she's there to collect a price on Marco's head. But Naomi says that she's there to talk to Philip, to which Corral responds that he doesn't want to talk to her, and Naomi says that she'd rather hear that from him. So, in the novels, Naomi doesn't go to Palace Station looking for Philip. Rather, Marco Naros calls Naomi to tell her that Philip is in trouble and needs her help, and invites her to meet Philip at Ceres Station. As in the show, Naomi appears to be from Palace, where she knew Marco, Sen, and Corral, but in the novels they weren't from Palace, but a more minor colony in the belt. So in the novels, when Naomi arrives at Ceres, she's being trailed by someone and manages to shake them, and then follows that person to see her tracker being chastised by Sen for losing Naomi, so Naomi introduces herself to Sen, and they reunite and reminisce. Sen is with Corral and several others. Now, in the books, Corral is a male rather than female, and he doesn't hate Naomi or is as hostile towards her the way that his show counterpart is. Also, Naomi denied access to Philip. Naomi isn't denied access to Philip the way that she is here, the whole point of her coming was to meet with Philip. The scene with the rockhoppers at the bar is very reminiscent of a scene with Amos when he stops over at Ceres on his way to Earth, and he spots a rockhopper sitting next to him as Amos orders tons of drinks, making it apparent that he can afford it, and the rockhopper resents him for it. So Amos considers provoking the man into a fight to take out some aggression, but instead offers to pay for all the man's drinks, who is very appreciative for that. So I like how the show included Palace Station and made that name Marco's home rather than some obscure station, as Palace is mentioned several times in the books and the show as a major port, but it's never seen. However, I do like that Naomi outsmarted her tracker better than her just being swindled by two rock hoppers. And I also prefer the Amos scene of choosing to buy another man's drink instead of beating him up. So I'm going to give this a -2. So next we go over to Taiko, where Bull has recruited Sakai to help them track down who abducted Monica Stewart. She manages to track the owner of the container to a shipping company in the belt owned by two men who are on the station. So Bull and Holden go with the security team to confront the men, but as soon as they open the door they find their dead bodies. So in the novels, nothing like this happened. After Monica was rescued, Fred Johnson tries to seek any information on her abduction through his contacts, and he receives a tip from Anderson Dawes that Sakai may be working with the extremist factions. In the novels, Johnson and Dawes are friends, and Johnson notes that if he can't trust Dawes, then he's really screwed. So Fred Johnson calls Holden in, and with Monica Stewart watching, he interrogates Sakai, who quickly admits to being involved. He then promptly has Drummer throw him in a dark cell. Johnson then notes the fact that the extremists are feeling comfortable enough to tip their hand really worries him. So I kind of like having the extra steps of misdirect. Gives the story a more detective type feel to it and makes our characters work more to get the intel, so I'm going to give this a +2. So then we go to Mars, where Alex and Bobby Draper are discussing Admiral Sauveterre, where Bobby is certain that he's involved in this conspiracy where Alex is not so sure. So Bobby tells him that when he meets with Sauveterre's aide, Lieutenant Babbage, to try to coax her for some more information on Sauveterre. Alex states that he doesn't want her to think that he's just there to get information on Sauveterre, and Bobby agrees that that's the last thing she wants. So Alex meets with Babbage at the bar, and they share wine together and seem to flirt with one another. However, underneath they are both aware they are there to get information from the other. Babbage asks Alex about the time he spent on Illis and how the alien technology was activated and what the results were. We later learn at the end of the season the reason why that she's asking is to gather intelligence on how they can operate the alien technology on Laconia. Alex tells her the protomolecule was essential to activating the alien technology, which is probably why Duarte and his splinter group go out of their way to obtain a sample of the protomolecule. However, when Alex tries to coyly inquire about Sauveterre, Babbage shuts him down. However, she does mention that she's shipping out the next day on a ship called the Barkeith for what she refers to as a routine cargo run. However, still maintaining the facade that they're on some kind of date, she kisses him goodnight before leaving. So as I discussed in previous videos, in the novels, Alex and Bobby didn't investigate Sauveterre. Rather, Bobby asked Alex to check with his naval buddies and find out about the missing ships, and this leads Alex to have a conversation with Commander Duarte. There, Duarte confirms that he's aware of the missing ships, but pretends to be investigating the same thing, which Alex buys. So Duarte learns what Alex knows, while at the same time feeding him disinformation. This isn't something the reader is aware of until the end of the book, when we learn Duarte was behind the whole thing the whole time. At the time of this scene, the reader assumes Duarte is helping Alex in his investigation. So Duarte tips Alex off on a person who may be involved, but when Alex goes and visits them, he finds that they are dead, which cuts off their investigation as the Martian authorities take over, making it impossible for Bobby and Alex to continue investigating, which was obviously Duarte's plan. So I do like both versions. As I mentioned before, I like the fact that we meet Duarte ahead of time in the books, and the reason why the show didn't do it was probably for casting purposes. However, I think I prefer the show's version, as I love how Alex and Babbage their meeting is taking place entirely in subtext, and they both know it, yet still put on this facade that they're on some kind of date. And the show plays it really cool, as well as only observant viewers can catch on to that. It also foreshadows the Martian splinter group's interest in the protomolecule technology, and I did appreciate the book's version where Duarte is misdirecting Alex and the reader doesn't know it at the time, but I think I prefer the subtext conversation more, so I'm going to give this a +3. Next, we see Alex in the corridor going back to his room when he's approached by a woman who asks if he's Alex Kamal. When he confirms that he is, a big muscle man pops up out of nowhere and attacks him, shoving him into the room. After a brief struggle, the muscle man pins him down and the woman injects him with some kind of truth serum. She then asks Alex why he's asking about Admiral Silverterra and who he's working with, and Alex, being under the influence, answers honestly. She then tells the thug to kill Alex, but before that can happen, Bobby enters the room and the thug shoots at her instead, but he misses, and then a struggle ensues, in which ends in Bobby knocking out the muscle man, and when the woman tries to inject her with the drugs, Bobby turns it around on her and injects the woman with the drugs instead. The police then arrive to arrest the intruders, but Bobby just tells them that they were robbing them. After the police leave with their assailants, Bobby tells Alex that at least now they knew that they were shaking the right trees. Alex remarks that the trees aren't supposed to shake back. Bobby asks if Alex learned anything from his date with Babbage, and he said that she's shipping out tomorrow on a ship called the Barkeith. Alex suggests that they could use his ship, the Razorback, to chase them, but Bobby points out it's technically her ship since she salvaged it, but Alex asks her not to get all legalese on him and points out that they have no guns. So chasing a couple of Martian warships could be dangerous, but she assures him that that's why they have such a great pilot with them, of course referring to him. So in the novels, as I touched on earlier, there was an attack on Alex and Bobby, but in the novels it was the attack that led Alex to join the investigation rather than the investigation that brought on the attack. In the books, Bobby had asked Alex to help her in her investigation, and he showed up at her place with the intention of turning her down, but instead found her tied up and being interrogated by two people who were apparently just asking her about Alex. A fight then ensued in which they get the better of their attackers, but Bobby is wounded in the process and has to be brought to a hospital. The part about them going off on the Razorbacks happens later in the story after their investigation reaches a dead end with Duarte. Holden leaves Alex a message asking him to investigate a missing ship near the Hungarian asteroids near Mars, and Alex suggests since they have nothing less to investigate on Mars that perhaps they can investigate that instead. However, in the novels, Alex didn't have the Razorback and he took a transport to get to Mars, so he asks Bobby Draper if she has access to a ship, and she mentions that she has the Razorback, which was given to her by Avasarala as a gift, and that she had intended to sell it but never got around to it. So they agree to take the Razorback to investigate the missing ships by the Hungarian asteroids. So I think it makes more sense for Bobby to be the one to save Alex rather than the reverse, as Bobby is bigger and more badass. And it was great seeing her in action. Although I did like the fact that the Razorback belonged to Bobby and not Alex better. But I think the scene with the truth serum and having that confirm that Admiral Silverterra is involved and that they leave on the Razorback to investigate something that is directly tied into their investigation on the military technology being sold on the black market is a lot more interesting. So I'm going to give this a +3. So, also in this episode, we get a series of scenes centered around Kamina Drummer and her crew as they discover the remains of Klaus Ashford's ship and attempt to salvage it, and that this brings up a lot of regrets for Drummer, particularly the regret that she didn't kill Marco Inaros when she had the chance, and the regret that she didn't go with Ashford to hunt down Marco Inaros. She manages to find the hidden recording that Ashford made right before he died that records Marco hinting at his intention to throw asteroids at Earth and the sea shanty that he sang as he died. This worsens the blow for Drummer, who announces to her crew that they're going to hunt down Marco and collect a reward on his head. When they object that they're salvagers and not bounty hunters, Drummer says that they're about making money. And this is a good way to make money. However, Oksana, who is probably closest to Drummer, can see through her bluster and can tell it's about grief and regret, and tells her that she doesn't have to be the person she used to be who always resorted to violence to solve all her problems, and that she should worry more on how best to protect her new family. So she convinced Drummer to give up on the prospect of going after Marco. So instead, Drummer sends Fred Johnson the recording that Ashford made, saying that maybe it will do some good for the belt, but says that it's not her fight. So, as I mentioned before, Drummer's storyline this season is loosely based off of the storyline from Michio Pa in Book 6. Although it has been a while since I read Book 6, I don't think anything like this happened in the book. This is again a result of them changing the storyline to focus on Drummer, so they have to deal with Drummer's backstory as it appears in the show. And of course, in the books, Ashford's Season 4 storyline also did not exist. So I thought this was a great way to deal with the storyline that the show itself set up. Part of the issue I had with Drummer's storyline this season is that it seemed that they crammed her into Michio Pa's storyline, even if she doesn't necessarily seem to fit. Whereas here, Drummer is portrayed as more consistent with the show character of Drummer and doesn't really resemble the book character of Michio Pa, which is more consistent, better storytelling, and also the storyline serves to better develop her and her new family and her connection to them. So I'm going to give this a +2. So next we go over to Palace, where Naomi sits alone at an empty bar when Philip comes in, and no doubt he was sent by Sin. Naomi tells Philip she needs to speak with him, but he asks why he should listen to anything she has to say, as she discarded him like a piece of trash. She apologizes and tells him that it was never about him and that she loves him more than anything, but Philip says he used to dream of this moment when he was a young boy, but the moment never came and now it's too late. He then asks why she came, and she said to protect him as he's in danger if he continues to follow his father. She tells him that she bought the ship that she came in on and is giving it to him as a gift so he can go wherever he wants, and she'll give him money when he gets there. His response to this is to say, "Fuck you." She tries to tell him that she knows what he's going through, but he tells her that she doesn't know shit, and that everything his father told him about her is true, and then he leaves. So in the novels, things went down quite differently, as Philip and Marco's they purposely called her to there to trap her under the guise of helping Philip. So Philip pretended to be on good terms with her throughout their many interactions and pretended it was good to see her, but Naomi could tell he didn't quite mean it and was just saying what his father told him to say. Also in the novels, Naomi didn't arrive in the Texmocha, which she bought with the intention of giving it to Philip. She arrives at Ceres on a passenger ship, which was to the disappointment of Philip, as they thought she'd arrive on the Rosinante. In other words, Marco's original plan was to commandeer the Rosinante. So when that didn't happen, Philip told Naomi they needed a ship for their plan. So Naomi then bought the Texmocha from a shady crime syndicate that she had dealings with before, and they were going to use it for Philip's plan to keep him safe, though she wasn't exactly sure what she was keeping him safe from. She just did as he asked. So I found this show's version much, much more powerful. Philip wasn't tricking or deceiving Naomi, therefore he didn't have to pretend to be okay with her, and instead let his real feelings of rage and abandonment come to the forefront, and it was a beautifully acted, a very wonderful scene. So I'm going to give this a +4. Back on Taiko Station, Bull and Holden go to Johnson and tell him that they have no idea who killed the two men, as they did a good job of covering their tracks. But Johnson tells them that they don't have to worry about it, as he and Sakai discovered that a ship is coming to collect a container that Monica Stewart was in, as they believe that she's still in it. So Bull comes up with a plan to set a trap for them, as he intends to hide in the container with a strike team so that when they open it, they can take them and take the ship. Holden warns Bull to make sure he leaves someone alive to talk to. So nothing like this really happens in the novels, as they discovered Sakai was the mole first, where here it's clearly Sakai who is setting the trap for Johnson. Now I have mixed feelings about this, because it added this added extra action sequence does raise the stakes and create more suspense, but it also makes Johnson in the show not as smart as his book counterpart, who had already figured out that Sakai was the mole, whereas in the show, Sakai is playing him like a fiddle, which kind of annoys me. So I'm going to split the difference, and I'm going to give this a 0. We then go back to the Texmocha, where Naomi is plotting a course back to Taiko. When Philip enters, she's at first glad to see him, but then Corral and Sin enter menacingly surrounding her, and Philip then zaps her with a taser. Corral says thanks for the ride, and Sin apologizes as he picks her up and starts carrying her away, but Philip tells him to secure her in the ship. Corral tells Philip that she can't come, but he doesn't listen to her and insists Naomi is coming with them. Naomi yells out her objections, so she's shocked again and she loses consciousness. So in the books, as I mentioned, the plan was always to give the Texmocha to Philip and the whole gang. However, once they're on board, Naomi announces she isn't coming with them and tells Philip once he's out of danger that the ship is his and he should use it to go wherever he wants to get away from his father. Again, Philip patronizes her and pretends to consider it, but really the plan all along is to abduct Naomi. So when she tries to leave, Corral tases her and they lock her up in the hole. So in the show, Naomi coming wasn't part of the plan. It's just something Philip did last minute, and he didn't really have a good reason other than he wanted to be with his mother. And to me, having it so it was Marco's plan to trap and capture her all along makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm not sure why the show didn't do it that way as well. So I'm going to give this a -3. So next we go to Luna, where Admiral Delgado goes to Avasarala to tell her that the watchtowers are not going to be redirected to look for asteroids armed with stealth tech. When she asks him why, he tells her that as soon as he mentioned Marco Nars's name, he was shut down and stonewalled. He was then contacted by Nancy Gal's chief of staff and told to stop being the mouthpiece for Avasarella's conspiracy theories. Avasarella tells him that Nancy Gal's chief of staff is a fucking idiot, but Delgado tells her he's done. She tries to convince him that they both know that they're right and asks if he'd rather have a cushy retirement than prevent an attack on Earth. But he tells her that it's over and leaves. So as I mentioned, nothing like this happened in the novels, as there was no foreshadowing to Marco Norris's attack. Now, typically, I'm a fan of the foreshadowing the show added, as I think it raises the suspense and the stakes. However, I don't particularly buy this scene, as I believe Gal's administration is being obtuse and idiotic and petty, and I kind of don't buy it. So I'm going to give this a -3. So next we see Avasarella contact Arjun and leave him a message that is loving and caring, and so she's trying to reconcile with him. After she finishes, she receives a message from Fred Johnson that contains the recording Ashford made shortly before his death, giving her proof that his attacks are coming. However, the proof comes a little late, as next we see an asteroid glide past Earth's asteroid spotters undetected, and it crashes near the coast of Africa, where we see a man instantly vaporized in a devastating disaster. So again, nothing like this happened in the novels. In fact, we only first hear about the first asteroid disaster in the background as Amos watches the news, so it's kind of presented as, at first, like it's no big deal. Now, I have mentioned before how I'm not a fan of the storyline of Arjun being estranged from Christian shortly before his death, as I find it kind of a cheap way to create irony. And it's even cheapened here by having her send a message to reconcile right before his death. So I'm not a big fan of that, but I did really much prefer the way that the show handled the asteroid attack, as it is a big deal, and seeing close up the devastation was a lot more powerful. So I'm going to give this a +2. So my final adaptation score for Mother is a +14. Overall, a pretty strong adaptation. I felt they brought more weight to the Naomi storyline and more intrigue to Alex's storyline. And overall, they improved upon what was already strong source material. So that's it for my book to show comparison for Season 5, Episode 3. I shall be back in a couple of weeks to cover Episode 4 of Season 5, so be sure to keep an eye out for that, as well as many other videos that I do on the Expanse, as well as many other shows like Star Trek, Breaking Bad, The Outer Limits, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.